It's the end of the 1:20 p.m. turn, and here is the centre for so much of the fighting throughout that turn. The French, d'Erlon's corps, moved up and launched a series of 7 assaults throughout this area of the Allied defences around La Haye Sainte. A lot of French forces pushing through. I think we had 2 or 3 divisions hitting the Allied lines this turn. Unfortunately for the French, their attacks didn't go very well. They did manage to inflict some casualties among those British and Nassau units, but as you can see there, a lot of French units also disordered, and perhaps most importantly, they didn't gain any ground at all. None of their assaults forced any routs among the Allies. Nonetheless, d'Erlon continues to push forward. More divisions coming up. Still a lot of fresh French units in that area. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of Allied units. The Brunswickers still waiting behind the lines there. Strong line of artillery on the left, and the Dutch-Belgians continue to hold the heights on the right. Some good news for the French over to the right here as they are moving forward and getting ready to unlimber their guns. The Allied light cavalry activated and tried to disrupt that artillery. The French light cavalry, who you can see here, countercharged and forced 3 of those Allied light cavalry units to rout. So that has secured French cavalry superiority in this area, allowed the guns to set up to support the infantry. So the French are looking pretty strong on that right-hand side there. Again, with more of d'Erlon's men and more artillery still moving up on the right. So you can see the situation is still developing. The French hitting hard through some assaults with more of d'Erlon's and even Lebeau's men here in the centre moving up around La Haye Sainte. The other focus of the fighting was around Hougoumont, where the French are now really just grinding the British Guards down. They are inflicting some pretty heavy casualties. This time, they've kind of turned the tables through a series of both assaults and some musket fire. They eliminated a Guards regiment here just through some lucky fire, and they've caused some heavy losses out on this flank here through some assaults. The Guards are now much weaker than they were 2 hours ago. Having said that, so are Foy's men and Reille's corps more broadly. Jerome is pushing on the left here, shifting further to the left. These Hanoverians, I think, in the centre here have been sort of copping the brunt of this French artillery fire, and that artillery has really caused some heavy losses among those men. Again, there's 1 eliminated regiment there, the others have been reduced a little more. Shifting further left, it's been pretty quiet here, just a standoff, this cavalry against these squares. 1 light cavalry unit tried to test the strength of those Dutch-Belgian squares, and they realised that those Dutch-Belgian squares, even with their poor morale, are still very strong, and the rest of those light cavalry units decided not to join the fighting around there. So it looks like the French will continue around here. They are really beginning to identify weaknesses in that British defence. The problem is the French just have so many extra divisions behind the line. The problem for the Allies is, I guess, Wellington has now shifted over to La Haye Sainte. There he is in the centre there. Further to the right, more Prussians are beginning to arrive. Some Prussian artillery has arrived in the field, and they are now moving west towards the focus of the fighting. Now, the French, further south here, have allocated the Guards that task of holding off the Prussians, hoping to just delay them enough to break through somewhere around these Allied lines, force a decision here and not have to worry then about the Prussians. D'Erlon's still in strength, and he's hoping that he can make the biggest impact, but Reille's corps is really ground down. They've suffered some heavy losses. It's as I said, at the end of that 1:20 p.m. turn, we'll see what happens in this area over the next hour or two as more and more Prussian reinforcements begin to flood in from the east and through the Bois de Paris on the right there.